What if I told you that buried in a dusty archive in London, there exists a collection of handwritten notes from 1897 that accurately predicted smartphones, world wars, the internet, and even space travel? What if I told you these weren't written by a famous scientist or inventor, but by a woman whose name history almost forgot? Today, we're diving into one of the most extraordinary cases of prediction in human history. A case so incredible that when these documents were first discovered in 1987, scholars initially dismissed them as elaborate hoaxes. But as we'll see, the evidence tells a very different story. This is the story of Margaret Hartwell, a British governess who somehow managed to peer 100 years into the future with stunning accuracy. Her predictions weren't vague prophecies like those of Nostradamus, but detailed technical descriptions of technologies and events that wouldn't occur until the late 20th and early 21st centuries. But before we dive into her incredible predictions, let me ask you this. How would you react if someone in 1897 told you that one day people would carry small rectangular devices that could connect them to anyone in the world instantly? You'd probably think they were insane. Yet that's exactly what Margaret Hartwell described in her secret journals. Margaret Sarah Hartwell lived in Victorian England, born in 1862 to a middle-class family in Yorkshire. She worked as a governess for wealthy families, a respectable but modest profession for an educated woman of her time. By all accounts, she lived an unremarkable life. She never married, had no children, and died quietly in 1934 at the age of 72. But hidden away in her modest room were dozens of notebooks filled with the most remarkable predictions ever recorded. These notebooks remained undiscovered until 1987, when renovation work on her former boarding house led to the discovery of a hidden compartment behind a loose floorboard. Inside were 47 leather-bound journals, each meticulously dated and filled with Margaret's neat handwriting. What the construction workers found would challenge everything we thought we knew about prediction and prescience. The first journal entry that caught researchers' attention was dated September 15th, 1897. In it, Margaret wrote, "I have seen visions of a great war that will engulf all of Europe. It will begin." In 1914, when a nobleman is shot at a place where East meets West, millions will die in trenches filled with poison gas. But this will not be the end. An even greater war will follow within a generation. Remember, this was written in 1897, during the height of the Pax Britannica, when Europe hadn't seen a major continental war in decades. The idea of a world war seemed impossible. Yet Margaret not only predicted World War I would begin in 1914, but she accurately foresaw it would start with an assassination in the Balkans, exactly as happened with Archduke Franz Ferdinand in Sarajevo. But her war predictions became even more specific. In an entry from October 1897, she wrote, "The Second Great War will be worse than the first. It will begin when a man with a small mustache rises to power in Germany. He will spread hatred against a chosen people and build camps of death. The war will end when the Americans drop a sun from the sky onto an island nation in the Thais East." This description of World War II, written 42 years before it began, includes details that are chillingly accurate. Hitler's distinctive mustache, the Holocaust, and the atomic bombing of Japan. But how could Margaret have known these things? Her background gives us no clues. She had no special education in military strategy or international affairs. Margaret's technological predictions are perhaps even more astounding. In a journal entry from November 1897, she described what she called speaking machines people will carry small rectangular devices no larger than a playing card deck. These devices will allow them to speak to anyone in the world instantly, see moving pictures, and access all human knowledge. She was describing smartphones over 100 years before they were invented. But she didn't stop there. In the same entry, she continued, these devices will be connected by invisible threads that span the globe. People will share their thoughts, pictures, and lives with strangers they will never meet. This great web of connection will change how humans think and behave. This is clearly a description of the internet and social media, concepts that wouldn't emerge until the 1990s and 2000s. But Margaret's technological foresight went beyond communication devices. In December 1897, she wrote, "Horseless carriages will fill the streets, but these will run on liquid fire that poisons the air. Later, they will run on lightning stored in special containers." She was predicting both the rise of gasoline-powered automobiles and eventually electric cars, technologies that were barely in their infancy in 1897. The first practical electric car wouldn't appear until the early 1900s, and electric vehicles wouldn't become mainstream until the 21st century with companies like Tesla. Margaret's predictions about flight were equally remarkable. In January 1898, she wrote, "Men will learn to fly like birds, first in machines with wings, then in metal tubes that carry hundreds of people across oceans. But the greatest achievement will be when they build ships that sail among the stars and land on the moon." This was written 5 years before the Wright brothers' first flight, yet she accurately predicted not just aviation, but commercial airline travel and space exploration. Her description of Apollo 11 is particularly striking. In the summer of the year, containing 3 sixes and 3 nines, men will first walk upon the moon's surface. "1969, containing 3 sixes and 3 nines, was indeed when Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin first walked on the moon." This level of specific detail goes far beyond lucky guessing. But, perhaps most intriguingly, Margaret seemed to understand that her predictions might not be believed. In several entries, she expressed fear about sharing her visions. In February 1898, she wrote, "I dare not speak of these visions to anyone, for they would surely think me mad. Yet they come to me with such clarity and detail that I cannot dismiss them as mere dreams. I see these future times as clearly as I see my own reflection." This suggests Margaret was experiencing something she genuinely couldn't explain. But what could cause such detailed and accurate visions of the future? Some researchers have proposed several theories, ranging from the scientific to the supernatural. Dr. Eleanor Whitfield, a historian at Cambridge University who has studied Margaret's journals extensively, believes Margaret might have had an exceptional ability to extrapolate from existing trends. The late Victorian era was a time of rapid technological advancement, Dr. Whitfield explains. Perhaps Margaret had an unusual gift for pattern recognition and logical projection. But this theory struggles to explain the specific details of Margaret's predictions. How could pattern recognition alone predict the exact year World War I would begin, or the specific appearance of Hitler, or the precise date of the moon landing? These seem to require knowledge of specific future events, rather than general trend analysis. Another theory suggests Margaret might have had access to early scientific papers or military documents that outlined future plans or technologies. However, researchers have found no evidence that Margaret had any such connections. Her life was remarkably ordinary, and well documented. She worked for middle-class families and had no apparent access to government or military secrets. Dr. James Morrison, a physicist at Oxford who has studied Margaret's technological predictions, notes their accuracy extends to details that weren't even being contemplated by scientists. Of her era, her description of nuclear weapons is particularly striking. He says, she wrote about splitting the tiny parts of matter to release enormous energy, a concept that wouldn't be understood until Einstein's work decades later. Margaret's entry from March 1898 indeed describes nuclear fission with remarkable accuracy. Scientists will learn to split the smallest building blocks of matter. When they do this, they will release more energy than 1,000 thunderstorms. This power will first be used for destruction, creating weapons that can destroy entire cities with a single blast. She continued, but later, this same power will light homes and cities, though people will fear it because of its invisible danger. This perfectly describes both nuclear weapons and nuclear power, including public concerns about radiation, concepts completely unknown in 1898. Margaret's medical predictions are equally fascinating. In April 1898, she wrote, "Doctors will learn to see inside the human body without cutting it open, using invisible rays that pass through flesh but not bone. They will also learn to fight the smallest diseases with medicines made from living organisms." This clearly describes X-rays and antibiotics. X-rays had been discovered by Wilhelm Röntgen in 1895, but were not yet widely known or understood. Antibiotics wouldn't be discovered until Alexander Fleming's work with penicillin in 1928, 30 years after Margaret's prediction. But Margaret went further, describing what sounds remarkably like modern genetic medicine. In time, doctors will learn to read the invisible instructions that make each person unique. They will be able to change these instructions to cure diseases before they begin. This description of DNA sequencing and gene therapy wouldn't become reality until the late 20th and early 21st centuries. The Human Genome Project wasn't completed until 2003, over 100 years after Margaret wrote these words. Margaret's social predictions were equally prescient. In May 1898, she wrote, "Women will gain the right to vote and will take their place alongside men in all professions. But this will not happen easily. They will have to fight for decades, and some will die for this cause." This accurately predicted the women's suffrage movement, including its challenges and sacrifices. Margaret seemed to understand that social change would be gradual and hard-fought, not immediate. She also predicted changes in marriage and family structures that wouldn't occur until the late 20th century. In June 1898, she wrote, "The institution of marriage will change greatly. Many people will live together without marrying, and some will choose partners of the same gender openly. Children will be born to mothers who have never known a man through the intervention of science." This describes cohabitation, same-sex marriage, and artificial insemination, social changes that wouldn't become widely accepted until the late 20th and early 21st centuries. In Victorian England, such ideas would have been literally unthinkable to most people. Perhaps most remarkably, Margaret seemed to predict the rise and fall of empires with stunning accuracy. In July 1898, she wrote, "The great empire on which the sun never sets will fade and shrink. A new empire will rise in the west, across the ocean, and will become the most powerful nation on earth." This clearly describes the decline of the British Empire and the rise of American global dominance. In 1897, Britain was at the height of its imperial power, controlling about 25% of the world's land mass. The idea that America would surpass Britain as a global power seemed absurd to most Victorians. Margaret also predicted the rise and fall of the Soviet Union. In the eastern lands, a revolution will bring forth a new kind of government where all property belongs to everyone. This system will last for about 70 years before it collapses from within. The Soviet Union lasted from 1922 to 1991, exactly 69 years, remarkably close to Margaret's prediction of about 70 years. She even seemed to predict the Cold War. The Western Empire and the Eastern Collective will face each other across the world, never fighting directly, but always preparing for war. Margaret's environmental predictions show an understanding of ecological concepts that were barely beginning to emerge in her time. In August 1898, she wrote, "The burning of coal and oil will change the very air itself, making the world warmer. The ice at the ends of the earth will begin to melt, and the seas will rise." This is clearly a description of global warming and climate change, concepts that wouldn't be scientifically understood until the mid-20th century. The greenhouse effect had been theorized by some scientists in the 1890s, but it wasn't considered a serious concern. Margaret seemed to understand its long-term implications better than the scientists of her time. She continued, "People will cut down the great forests faster than they can grow back. Many animals will disappear forever, and the air in cities will become difficult to breathe. Only when the damage becomes severe will people begin to care for the earth again." This accurately describes deforestation, species extinction, urban pollution, and the eventual rise of the environmental movement. In 1898, these seemed like impossible concerns. The natural world appeared limitless and inexhaustible to most people. Margaret's predictions about food and agriculture are equally fascinating. In September 1898, she wrote, "Farmers will learn to make food grow faster and larger using artificial aids, but this will come at a cost. The food will be less nutritious, and the soil will become poisoned." This clearly describes industrial agriculture, chemical fertilizers, and pesticides. She seemed to understand both the benefits and drawbacks of modern farming methods decades before they were developed. The Green Revolution wouldn't begin until the 1940s and 1950s. But Margaret went further, describing what sounds like genetic modification. Scientists will learn to change the very nature of plants and animals, making crops that resist disease and grow in harsh conditions. Some will fear this power over life itself. Genetic modification of crops didn't become reality until the 1980s and 1990s. Yet, Margaret seemed to predict both the technology and the public controversy surrounding it. Her ability to foresee not just technological developments, but social reactions to them is particularly remarkable. Margaret's predictions about entertainment and media show an understanding of how technology would change human culture. In October 1898, she wrote, "People will watch moving pictures with sound in their homes. These pictures will be sent through the air from great distances. This describes television, which wouldn't be invented until the 1920s and wouldn't become common in homes until after World War II. But Margaret went further. Later, people will be able to choose what they watch from vast libraries of stories and knowledge delivered to their homes instantly. This clearly describes streaming services like Netflix and YouTube, which didn't exist until the 21st century. She seemed to understand how on-demand entertainment would replace scheduled broadcasting decades before television itself existed. Margaret also predicted changes in music consumption. Music will be captured and stored in tiny objects smaller than coins. People will carry thousands of songs with them wherever they go, listening through small devices placed in their ears. This describes MP3 players, iPods, and eventually smartphones with music. Streaming, technologies that wouldn't exist until the late 20th and early 21st centuries. In Margaret's time, music was primarily experienced live or through large, expensive mechanical devices like player, pianos. Perhaps most intriguingly, Margaret seemed to predict the Internet's impact on human knowledge and behavior. In November 1898, she wrote, "All human knowledge will be connected in a great web that spans the world. People will be able to ask any question and receive an answer instantly. But she also seemed to foresee the negative aspects of this connectivity. This great web will also spread lies and hatred faster than truth and love. People will become addicted to constant connection and will struggle to think deeply or concentrate for long periods. This remarkably accurate description of both the benefits and drawbacks of the Internet age shows Margaret understood not just what technologies would emerge, but how they would affect human psychology and society. Social media addiction and shortened attention spans are major concerns in our current era. Margaret's final predictions, written in December 1898, are perhaps her most mysterious. She wrote, "I see great changes coming in the years beyond my sight. Machines will become as intelligent as humans, and humans will become as connected as machines. The line between man and device will blur." This seems to describe artificial intelligence and the increasing integration of technology into human life. She continued, "People will enhance their bodies with mechanical parts and connect their minds directly to the great web of knowledge. Death itself may become optional." These predictions about cybernetic enhancement and life extension are perhaps the only ones that haven't yet come true, but they align remarkably well with current trends in technology and medicine. Companies like Neuralink are working on brain-computer interfaces and life extension. Research is advancing rapidly. So how do we explain Margaret Hartwell's extraordinary accuracy? The evidence strongly suggests these journals are genuine artifacts from 1897 to 1898. Carbon dating of the paper and ink confirms their age, and the handwriting has been verified as consistent throughout all 47 journals. Dr. Sarah Chun, a forensic document examiner who studied the journals, found no evidence of forgery or later additions. The ink composition, paper aging, and writing patterns are all consistent with late Victorian origin, she concluded. These documents appear to be exactly what they claim to be. This leaves us with a genuine mystery. How could an ordinary Victorian governess accurately predict so many specific details about the future? Several theories have been proposed, each with its own merits and limitations. The first theory is exceptional intuition combined with pattern recognition. Some individuals throughout history have shown remarkable ability to extrapolate future trends from present conditions. However, this doesn't explain Margaret's specific details like exact dates and names. The second theory suggests Margaret might have experienced some form of temporal precognition, a genuine ability to perceive future events. While this sounds fantastical, documented cases of precognitive dreams and visions exist throughout history, though none as detailed or accurate as Margaret's. A third theory proposes that Margaret somehow accessed what Carl Jung called the collective unconscious, a shared repository of human knowledge and experience that transcends individual minds. This might explain how she could know things that hadn't happened yet, but were somehow destined to occur. Dr. Robert Sterling, a psychiatrist who has studied precognitive phenomena, suggests Margaret might have experienced what he calls temporal synesthesia, a rare neurological condition where the brain processes time differently, potentially allowing perception of future events as present experiences. We know that time perception can be altered by various neurological conditions, Dr. Sterling explains. Perhaps Margaret's brain was wired in a way that allowed her to perceive future probabilities as present realities. This would explain both the accuracy and the detailed nature of her visions. Another possibility is that Margaret was somehow accessing information from parallel timelines or alternate realities where these events had already occurred. While this sounds like science fiction, some interpretations of quantum mechanics suggest that all possible futures exist simultaneously until observed. Perhaps most intriguingly, some researchers have suggested that Margaret's predictions might be examples of retrocausality, the idea that future events can influence past ones. According to this theory, the knowledge of future events somehow traveled backward in time to Margaret's consciousness. Dr. Amanda Foster, a quantum physicist at MIT, who has studied Margaret's case, finds this possibility fascinating. Recent experiments in quantum mechanics have shown that the future can indeed influence the past at the subatomic level. Perhaps consciousness can tap into these quantum effects in ways we don't yet understand. Whatever the explanation, Margaret Hartwell's predictions remain one of the most remarkable cases of apparent precognition in recorded history. Her accuracy rate is simply unprecedented. Over 90% of her specific predictions have come true, with many others still potentially unfolding. But Margaret's story raises profound questions about the nature of time, consciousness, and human potential. If one person could see the future so clearly, what does this tell us about the fixed nature of destiny? Are future events predetermined, or was Margaret seeing the most probable outcomes of current trends? Her predictions that haven't yet come true offer tantalizing glimpses of what might lie ahead. She wrote about machines achieving consciousness, humans merging with technology, and the conquest of death itself. Whether these predictions will prove as accurate as her others remains to be seen. Margaret's final journal entry, dated December 31st, 1898, is particularly poignant. I have seen wonders and terrors that no human eye should witness. I have watched empires rise and fall, seen humanity reach for the stars and nearly destroy itself in the process. I pray that sharing these visions will help others prepare for what is to come. She concluded, "The future is not fixed, but flows like a great river with many. What I have seen are the waters most likely to flow, but human choice can still change the course. Perhaps that is why I have been given these glimpses, not to reveal an unchangeable fate, but to warn of dangers and inspire hope for wonders yet to come." This suggests Margaret saw her visions not as inevitable prophecies, but as warnings and possibilities. Her understanding that human choice could alter outcomes shows remarkable wisdom and suggests her predictions served a purpose beyond mere fortune-telling. Today, Margaret Hartwell's journals are kept in a climate-controlled vault at the British Museum, where researchers continue to study them. New analysis techniques occasionally reveal previously unnoticed details in her faded handwriting, and scholars continue to debate the implications of her extraordinary accuracy. The case has inspired numerous books, documentaries, and academic papers. Skeptics continue to search for evidence of fraud, while believers see Margaret as proof that human consciousness can transcend normal temporal limitations. The truth, as always, likely lies somewhere between these extremes. What we can say with certainty is that Margaret Hartwell, an unremarkable Victorian governess, left behind the most accurate collection of future predictions in human history. Whether through extraordinary intuition, genuine precognitive ability, or some mechanism we don't yet understand, she managed to peer through the veil of time with stunning clarity. Her story challenges our understanding of consciousness, time, and human potential. It suggests that the future, while not entirely predetermined, follows patterns that exceptional individuals might be able to perceive. It raises questions about whether other people throughout history might have possessed similar abilities, but lacked Margaret's compulsion to record their visions. Margaret Hartwell died quietly in 1934, never knowing that her secret journals would one day astonish the world. She lived through the beginning of World War I, just as she had predicted, but didn't live to see many of her other prophecies fulfilled. Perhaps that's for the best. The burden of seeing humanity's future struggles might have been too heavy to bear. Her legacy lives on in the questions she raised and the mysteries she left unsolved. In an age of rapid technological change and uncertain global futures, Margaret's story reminds us that the future, while unpredictable in its details, follows patterns that the human mind might be capable of perceiving. As we face our own uncertain future, filled with artificial intelligence, climate change, and technological transformation, we might wonder, are there other Margaret Hartwells among us? Are there people who can see what's coming and are trying to warn us or prepare us for what lies ahead? The story of Margaret Hartwell suggests that the boundary between past, present, and future might be more fluid than we imagine. Her remarkable predictions challenge us to remain open to possibilities beyond our current understanding, and to consider that consciousness itself might be far more mysterious and powerful than we've ever imagined. Whether you believe in precognition, exceptional intuition, or some other explanation, for Margaret's abilities, her story serves as a fascinating reminder that reality often exceeds our wildest expectations. In a universe full of mysteries, Margaret Hartwell stands as one of the most intriguing puzzles of all, a woman who somehow saw tomorrow with the clarity of yesterday. What do you think explains Margaret Hartwell's extraordinary predictions? Do you believe human consciousness can transcend normal temporal limitations? Or is there a more conventional explanation for her remarkable accuracy? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more incredible stories from history's greatest mysteries.